So welcome everybody to Developer Direct US Canada Edition, Episode 5. It's Friday, May 17th. Today we're going to talk about multi-device development from data to business information. And as always, we'll take your questions as we can here. Let me make sure I get that window up. And again, we've got Al Menarino and Christine Ellis helping us, and looks like there's a couple questions already in there, but let's see what it says. I have an upside down doubly linked list. Okay, Reza, we'll think about an upside down doubly linked list data structure, but cool. It's a good one. All right, and here, if you want to take part in the conversation, we have a hashtag on Twitter, #EMBTDD. You can also follow us at @EMBTDD Direct. I can't say that. Just can't do two Ds together at the same time for some reason. My jaw doesn't work that way. But you can join the chat on Twitter by posting your own tweets and links and so on. I put a few up earlier this morning. I was on the EMEA English version at 2 a.m., 10 a.m. UK time. And you can also send an email to developerdirect.online@embarcadero.com. There's a bunch of us around the world that are following that, including some of the sales teams. So if you have any questions about products or ordering or how to upgrade, or you have technical questions, you can send those along, and all of us get those, and sometimes we'll answer multiple times. But that's cool. You get lots of coverage that way. But also you can put things in Twitter. That works out great, and you can be part of the conversation. Again, this is May 17th. We have a whole season or quarter full of events, with additional ones coming, another 4 to come after this one. Today, again, from business to data from data to business information. So as always, we start out with some news, and then we go into a discussion of the topic, and then a few demos, and also the Q&A. So just a reminder, if you hadn't noticed it, I know some developers are heads down working on projects, and they then come up for air and kind of poke their head out of from the computer screen and look around, and all of a sudden they realize, wow, there's an XE4 product. So we released that just about a month ago, next Monday. The XE4, you can upgrade, get new licenses. There's trial editions. There's 2 different trials. The instant trial, which you click on the instant trial, it starts downloading AppWave browser and the install, and within, I think I timed it on my older notebook, within 10 minutes the splash screen appeared. Within 11 minutes I could create my first VCL app. Within 15 minutes I could create my first FireMonkey multi-device app, and then in the background it caches and brings down the rest of the IDE as well. So if you want a quick install experience versus the traditional install where you download a small exe and then it starts pulling stuff around, and you sort of wait for, depending on the speed of your connection, could be 45 minutes, could be an hour, could be longer. The instant trial is very cool. Gets you started very quickly just by clicking on it and registering and going. And there's also information about the instant trial in an article on EDN. Just a reminder, we have a webinar coming up next week on Wednesday. 3 webinars, actually, 6 a.m., 11 a.m., and 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And then go to timeanddate.com to do the calculation for your time zones. It's about on-device rapid prototyping, how you can start and create a working prototype, work with your customers and users, and update it. Maybe you don't have a data set right away. You can use the prototype bind source to do some data pumping into your application, and build it on Windows, build it on devices, and take a look at it, make sure it's all great, and then deliver it. That's something we did years ago. The first Delphi ad and subsequent C++ builder ads, it all was about from prototype to application in one quick experience step. Look at it at design time, see it live, and then deploy it to multiple platforms and devices. So that's coming up next Wednesday, and then on Friday, we'll follow that webinar with the conversation and Developer Direct about on-device rapid prototyping. So if you can't make the webinar, you at least can join us next Friday for the conversation. Or if you come to the webinar and you have other questions, you want to see more understanding of what's going on, we follow that topic up next Friday. There's 2 white papers available specifically for XE4, the RAD Studio XE4 Product Reviewer's Guide, and the Delphi Language for Mobile Development white paper by Marco Cantu. Those are both available on the white papers area. Just go to Embarcadero.com. The resources menu, white papers, and application development. You'll see those and other white papers and articles there in addition to those. We had a recent news item that came up. A startup over in the Silicon Valley has chosen our development tools for building a technology that will run on a Macintosh. It's a technology to build a browser that you can run video and other things on any device without having anything really pre-installed. So that's pretty cool. You can check out that secure browser article and press release. The other thing happening this week, if you didn't notice it, in the same city as the headquarters of Embarcadero Technology, Google I/O is taking place. The keynote was on Wednesday, which was pretty cool. And the great thing about tracking what's going on with FireMonkey and with devices and with Google, especially as it relates to Android, you can get started today with XE4, add your upgrade subscription, keep in touch with us, and we will get you on board the ship that sails in San Francisco Bay. And the keynote link is there. Just a note for you, I've watched the keynote live and then I watched the replay. The replay video, the keynote actually starts about 6 minutes and 28 seconds into the start of the video if you want to push the little slider bar on YouTube, or if you download a version of the keynote. So that was pretty cool. Lots of cool stuff happening and a lot of great stuff happening here at Embarcadero as it relates to Android. So stay tuned. But all the work that you do today in Multidevice, Delphi, and C++ Builder, that will all help you in iOS and in Android with the same code base. And somebody asked about replays. We have the replays up for all the previous 4 episodes. There's a playlist, but you can just go to the Embarcadero page on YouTube, which is Embarcadero TechNet, and there you'll see one of the most recent videos. But you can also go to the playlist, and I put a bit.ly there. I should have created an embt.co short URL. But the links are also on my blogs to the replay, so you can go to my blog and see them there. But very easily, just watch the 4 previous U.S.-Canada episodes. And so that was one of the questions that came up, I think, from Lewis. He said, I missed last week when they'll be available. They were up that last Friday. I edited them, both number 3 and number 4, on Friday afternoon, and we put them up. So all 4 episodes are there, and I'll try to get this one edited today and up ASAP and in the playlist. There's lots of other things happening, lots of live events, online events. I mentioned the webinar next Wednesday. There's lots of face-to-face events happening the first week in June. I will be in Orange County in Southern California and in Los Angeles on the 4th and 5th of June. So if you're in the Southern California area, come and see XE4, C++ Builder, Delphi, mobile, all the stuff that's in RAD Studio XE4. And you can find the information on the calendar. And if you can't find it there, send me an email or send me an email to developer.direct@embarcadero.com. And Al, you're going to be in Montreal and Toronto, I think, that first week in June, right?
That is correct. Yeah, they're 5 and 6.
5 and 6. Okay, so I'm Tuesday, Wednesday, and you're Wednesday, Thursday. So if you're in Toronto or Montreal or nearby, come and see Al. Show you all the great sizzle that's in XE4. And maybe he'll bring bacon with him, too. I don't know.
Well, maybe some New York bagels.
Okay, New York bagels. So he's doing the 5th and 6th in Montreal and Toronto, and I'm doing the 4th and 5th in Orange County and Los Angeles. And Christine is working on some other cities for us in June in the U.S. or Canada. So stay tuned to the events page where you can find out about those live, in-person, and online events that are coming up. Okay, let's get to it. Data to business information. There's lots of different data. Of course, we talk about data. Everybody talks about how much data, so much data being generated, so much data being collected. And the question then becomes, what do you do with all that data? Of course, analyze it, graph it, chart it, put it in grids, put it in reports, all the different ways, view it, navigate to it. All of that is available. And what we're doing inside of exe4 and the previous versions is give you components and give you the tools to be able to connect to data, number one, whether it's in a cloud, whether it's in a multi-tier system, or whether it's live on your desktop system with local databases, for example, get you access to it and then be able to do things with it, visualize it, list it, navigate through it, and so on. And we have lots of great technology partners like TMS Software, for example. They have their FireMonkey Grid, which is an even more powerful grid for doing sorting and embedding graphs and other objects inside of cells of a grid. We have the fast reports for FireMonkey from the fast reports people that you can use to create reports, either create visual reports on the screen or create PDFs and other things, send them to the printer and so on. 2D and 3D views, you can have the HD view with shapes like circles and ellipses and rectangles and so on. Also 3D objects, so spheres and 3D meshes, custom meshes. Steema Software has their Tchart for Windows, for Mac, and for mobile. They have Tchart Lite is included in exe4. They even have Tchart for JavaScript that is part of our HTML5 builder product as well. So if you want traditional business charts, 2D pie charts, 3D bar charts, line charts, scatter charts, all of that, check out Steema Software, STEMA.com. And you can start with Tchart Lite and then upgrade to the professional version. Of course, when we think about multi-device considerations for data, there's lots of different choices you have. There's different kinds of inputs. Obviously, if you're getting the data from some kind of feed or from a database, that's a pretty standard way of getting a data, XML or SQL-based data. But you have different devices with different screen sizes. Even my Macintosh is a Retina display, has a different screen size than a Windows, than my older notebook, for example. So how do you navigate? How do you bring the data in? How much data should you bring at one time? All of that are things that you should think about with data. We always talk about multi-tier, and especially in a mobile device, maybe over a 3G network or something. Would you want to bring over 1 million rows? Or would you want to bring over a few rows at a time as you need them? And so what's great is the DataSnap server and the DataSnap client allows you to specify how much data. If you put -1, it'll bring all the data over from whatever operation takes place. Or you could set it to 100, bring over 100 rows at a time. And then as you're navigating through it, get to the 101st, it'll bring over another 100 rows. So there's lots of different ways. You can cache data in the middle tier, cache data locally. Al's going to talk about and show you some things with local databases like Interbase to go and Interbase Lite, where you can have a whole Interbase database on your device, on the Macintosh, on the Windows, on your deployed system, whatever it is. Or you can put all the data on a server and have an Interbase server running somewhere, or a Microsoft SQL server, or an Oracle server, and such. So there's lots of ways to think about the data operations that are taking place, and then, of course, how to visualize that. And in 2 weeks' time, we have a whole session on data visualization, engineering and scientific graphics and visualization. So we'll cover a lot of that there and maybe hint on a few things here. Again, should you use the same functionality on all devices? Last week, Anders Olsen showed you 2 ways to do master detail database operations. One where it was grids, with lots of data so that you could see it on a desktop system, maybe on an iPad or bigger tablet with bigger screen real estate. But when you get to mobile, maybe you just want to bring the customer list over, then click on a customer and bring up customer demographic information, then click on a button and bring up the invoice or sales data for that customer. So there's lots of different ways by having multi-tabs or swiping between forms like you see on a Macintosh, or as you would see on a tab notebook on Windows, or as you would see on an iOS device. So lots of different things to consider based on what the data is, how big it is in size, and how big it is in display screen real estate. If it's a large bitmap, you can shrink it down. Maybe you have to scroll around, depending on if it's a grid. Maybe you want to just bring part of a grid onto a form on a small device, maybe a column or even a selection inside of it. So lots of things to think about based on what's your target device. And we give you all the support for multiple formats. For iOS, you can create a form family and have a form layout for iPhone, a form layout for iPhone 5, a form layout for iPad, and then you just tell your application which device you're running on, and it picks the right form from the right form family. So there's lots of things that have been added to the completely revamped mobile support for FireMonkey. I wrote a blog earlier this week. Some people were wondering, and they asked questions, is this the same FireMonkey that was in XE2? And it is no way anywhere close. It is way beyond what we did in XE2 on iOS, which was a subset of FireMonkey specifically to start getting everybody thinking about doing things with iOS. Now we have our own compiler, our own optimizing ARM-based compiler. We showed that last week. So lots of stuff going on with FireMonkey, third generation in XE4, and native on the devices with native controls and so on. Again, you might have to think about where the data is located. We talked about that. Is it being pulled from a SOAP server, from a REST server? Is it a web service sending you XML or JSON? Is it cached offline? That's IB Lite. Al will talk about that. Again, how much data do you bring over? How much data do you send back from the device? All of those are considerations when we think about having data and turning it into some kind of information that we can use. And again, the traditional things on multi-tier, where to put the business logic, who should access it, do you need to have login, do you need to encrypt the data? If it's a multi-tier, we have encryption filter for data snap. You can also have authentication and authorization to decide who gets into the interfaces, who can see the metadata of the data snap server, for example. Same thing holds in web services, with security mechanism.
All right, wonderful. So David, as usual, awesome job introducing this topic. So as David presented in this session, two items that we need to think about for multi-device considerations for accessing data. So one of them is to have cached offline data on the device. And for that, I'm happy to say we can now use this included and free Interbase Lite database. So as long as your database doesn't need to get larger than 100 megabytes and you don't need any encryption on it, and you can get by with just one connection and one simultaneous user, then this Interbase Lite, this IB Lite database, is a great embeddable database you can put directly inside the iOS device, and it's been accepted by Apple already as one of the only two databases you can embed inside the iOS application. That's item number one. Then the second item that we want to consider is remote, live pull of data to the device. And for that, we can use web services and its XML capabilities. And for web services, I'm happy to say that Delphi for iOS supports all of the web service technologies. So that includes SOAP clients, REST clients, using the Indy HTTP component. It could be cloud clients. You can do XML processing using the ADOM. The WSDL importer is also supported. So any web service you have out there that has a WSDL, you can import that in and use it inside of Delphi for iOS. And we also support the HTTP remote interface object. So that's great. So to show some or all of this capability, I'm going to use this multi-tabbed hotel lookup app. So this app is using the embedded Interbase Lite database. I'm using FireDAC, our new data access components, to connect to the Interbase database. I have inside here a ListView component, and that's a great component. So a ListView component, unlike a ListBox, so you have ListBox and ListView. So I use a ListView component. That's a great component for displaying very long lists of scrollable data. Also, this application is using a web browser where I'm going to call a Google map to be able to display the hotel's location based on the hotel's longitude and latitude. And I'm also using the Indy HTTP component that I'm going to connect to an external website to bring back a hotel XML file that I can parse to get all the hotel information, and I use the XML document component to do the parsing for me. So that's all pretty cool. So let's take a step back and let's first look at the FireDAC data access components, and that we're going to use to connect to the IB Lite connection first. So to do this, I created a data module. So I have a data module. On this data module, I dropped our FireDAC AD connection component. So these are the minimum components that I need to put to connect to my backend Interbase database. So I have this AD component, and as you can see, as far as option that it needs, all it needs to know is the driver name. In this case, it's Interbase. And the params, you can see, are pretty much basic. All I need is the database driver. In my case, it's Interbase, and the character set I'm using. The next component I need is a FireDAC query component. And so with the FireDAC query component, I just connected to my SQL connection here. And just like we used to have in the BDE, it has a SQL property where I'm simply going to say, once I connect, I have my embedded Interbase database. I want to select everything from the embedded Interbase database. Then I can manipulate it actually on the device. Now, to actually be able to deploy this application onto our devices, I needed to add 2 more additional FireDAC components. One is called the AD physical IB driver component, and simply what this is going to do is add the required references to my code. So the physical component adds this AD physical IB, which is really the driver to get to the back end, the embedded Interbase Lite component. And the other component on there I'll show you is going to add this unit in here. It's the AD GUI FireMonkey weight component, and this gives us the hourglass when we're doing our weights. And we see for this component, which is our GUI weight cursor, I have a choice of 3 different providers. Since I'm going to a FireMonkey iOS application, I picked FireMonkey. My other options was either a console application or a VCL Forms application. All right, so that's pretty much it for the database connection. All right, let's now look at the main form. So in the main form, we see here that we're using the Indy HTTP component with a XML document component, and we're going to use these to get the hotel information from a web XML file. So when we click on this button, that's what it's going to do for us. I have a method here, function called get and handle the XML data. So when I click on that button, I'm going to use Indy HTTP to go to this website and bring down an HTML, a hotel XML file. And then once I have it, I'm going to use the document component to parse the XML and pull out the name of the hotel, the address, longitude, latitude, all this information that I need. And then once I have all of that, we can see here from the multi-tab. So that's what the first tab is going to do. So the first tab is going to parse that information and display all the hotels that it gets inside of this list view. And to make that connection easy for me, I'm using Live Bindings Designer. So I'm saying for this list view that I created, take all the hotel information and drop it onto that list view for me. Then once I have that, I'm going to select one of the hotels on the list view, and that's going to take me to my second tab, where I have my web browser, where I'm going to call Google Maps and pass it the longitude and latitude of the hotel to display it on the Google map. So that's going to be pretty cool, and we'll see that. Then my other tabs here are, tab number 3 is I can create comments on these hotels. Did I like it? Did I not like it? And I can also add. So any new hotels that come up, I can insert them, if I like them, insert them into my embedded Interbase database that I can use in the future going forward. So that's pretty much the walkthrough what we have here. So if you've seen some of the other sessions, right, I have my Platform Assist server running on my Mac. I can either run this application out to my simulator, but you guys actually deserve to see it on my device. So let me send it out to the device, which I have plugged into my box. So if I come over here, this is what the app looks like on the simulator. I'll just fire that up now. While I'm taking, now I got my iPad 3 here. I'm going to turn on its AirPlay, so you should be able to see what I'm seeing. let's see if we can get this. Great. All right, so can you see, so David, can you see my iPad on your screen?
I see it. It looks glorious. It's got MathViz. That'll come up in a couple weeks, and all sorts of other FireMonkey icons.
This is great. So that app we have there, and we'll get you access to it, deployed into a simulator, or this is the app right here. Well, I'm clicking on the screen like it's going to do something. I need to click on my iPad. click it on my iPad. Brings up the application. So when I click on this, it makes that web service call out to the internet. And I added this, this is an annotation component to do system activity. So now it's going out to the internet, grabbing that hotel XML file, parsing that hotel XML file, and displaying it on this list view. So that's pretty cool. Now it's running on the simulator. Simulator pops up, goes out, gets the information, pick one of the items, sends it to the next tab, passes the longitude and latitude to the Google map in my on my web browser page, and displays it on the device. So that's pretty cool. So if we like this hotel where it is, we can tell the application, all right, I want to save this in my embedded Interbase database. It gets saved, so that's pretty cool. And then any comments I want to put on it, I add them here. So as you can see, we have all, because I went to a Taiwan hotel site, all the character and all the data is coming back as Unicode characters. So this app itself was created for folks that live and use hotels in Taiwan, and it's a great app to show how well Interbase can handle Unicode characters also. So that's kind of what I wanted to walk you through. So at this point, David, I can turn it back over to you, and we can continue. Delphi for iOS, can you display 2 or more fields in the list view? Yes, absolutely. Not only 2 or more fields, but you can embed images in those list view items also, so that's all very cool. Is there a tutorial on how to set up Mac in Cloud to work with Delphi XE4?
I don't think we've done a tutorial per se. There is a tutorial for setting up the PA server, how to set up the PA server for Macintosh. You need to get your Mac in Cloud account, and then that gives you access to do remote access to the Macintosh, and then you need to copy over the PA server PKG file to that Macintosh instance that you have, and install it and start it. And then get the IP address by going to a console window, ifconfig. All that's covered in the setting up the PA server for Macintosh and doing development. And then you just have your ID on Windows point to the IP address of where your Macintosh is in the cloud. The only thing you can't do on the cloud, Mac in Cloud, is there's no way to connect the device to the Mac in Cloud virtual Mac. So you have to use a simulator. And so the simulator, Al, I think, it lets you do certain things like change the orientation. You can set a default location. You can do shake gestures, but things like, you can't access accelerometer, orientation sensor, things like that, because you don't have a real device. But you do quite a bit with the simulator.
Correct. And what I didn't show is when I actually deployed that embedded Interbase database, as long as you put it into the startup / documents folder. So anytime you're doing the automatic, backup my device to the cloud, anything that's in that folder will automatically get backed up to the Mac cloud also. So that's also pretty cool to know.
Yeah. So again, for deployment, all that, Al showed it. Anders did it last Friday. If you look at the different episode replays and also the product launch, there's lots of demos. Also in XE4, there's an IB Lite code snippet that takes you through all of that, and so lots of things about how to deal with sitting in the IDE and connecting to a device or the simulator on a Macintosh. What we'll have to do is maybe write up something and do a little video actually showing what you can do with Mac in Cloud. That's probably a good idea.
Okay. So there was
I know we're working with the Mac in Cloud people to come up with some special offers and information. In addition, I'm just waiting to hear from product management when that's all set up, and then we'll tell everybody about it.
Okay. Just quickly going down the questions. So I missed last week. Did we post last week's session yet?
All 4 of the replays are up on YouTube, and I put that link up. But just go to the Embarcadero TechNet site, which is on YouTube, and then the playlist is Developer Direct, I think, is the name of the playlist. If you want to see the list of them, or you can look at all the videos and click on one of them, or all of them.
Another presenter says, I'm looking at C++ Builder XE4 for evaluation of this issue I have in mind. So what? Oh,
this was, he was talking, yeah, Reza was talking about, Reza was talking about he had this doubly linked list, upside down, complex data structure. He needs to visualize in a way clear and interesting, whether VCL or something else. I mean, well, we don't have a linked list visualization mechanism, but I mean, you can do anything in code. You could always, of course, put the whole data structure in a grid. You could bind it to a grid. But Reza, I'm going to see if I can find someone who's visualized a double linked list. But you could do that in FireMonkey pretty easily by just putting either ListBox together and then have lines between the ListBoxes if you visually want to do something. But you could create ListBoxes and visually bind the data in a linked list, for example, object. Or write a little code that pulls things out of the linked list and sticks values into list boxes or list views, or into grids for that matter. But we don't have a linked list visualization. Now, that might be something I'll think about for 2 weeks from now for the data visualization. We always think about things like graphs and maps and meshes, but I guess a traditional data structure view would be a good one too. Whether it's a stack or a linked list or a double linked list, that'd be pretty cool. Just boxes and lines, ultimately. Let's see. Oh, there's a question that always comes about runtime sizes. Size of applications. I went through all the apps on my system, and for example, I think the minimum, if you don't do anything, everybody's comparing that empty FireMonkey. They just say FireMonkey mobile blank application, and they hit run, and then they go, or compile, and they go look at the size. Right now, we're bringing in all of FireMonkey, at least all the visual control parts of FireMonkey, not necessarily all the underlying runtime library. And the reason is, imagine since we're style-based, and a lot of the FireMonkey controls, the composite controls, are based on components, and that we don't even know if you're going to have code that's going to, for example, put an ellipse in an element of ListBox, and the ListBox entry has a T text, has a T label in it, and maybe a T edit by default. There's lots of things that, because you can dynamically load styles yourself in code, we don't necessarily know what, if everything, you would need. So we'd have to think about, what do we pre-process all your style files that you might ever load or give to somebody? So right now, we're pulling in a lot of FireMonkey, but again, it doesn't grow. It grows in chunks as you use more things. So if you use IB Lite, that needs to be statically linked, right, Al? Because there's no dilibs on iOS, or a user guide.
That's correct.
Versus if you have VCL or you have FireMonkey on Windows, where you can build with runtime packages and Macintosh, then the exits get really small. You can, turn off the debug information, of course, but still rather large. Hobie's saying, well, large is relative, I think. There's lots of memory on these devices. Well, maybe Samsung's Galaxy 4 is 16 megabyte. But, I like the Twitter app I have is like almost 50 megabytes. Now, a bunch of that is data as well. So you can do things like don't embed big images in your executable. Don't embed big 3D models in your form file. Load them dynamically from the startup documents folder, and that'll hold down some of the form file part of the size. But ultimately, because of styles and how the FireMonkey components are rendered, we have to bring in a lot of FireMonkey's user interface controls, because you might use them in some embedded control itself. Because you can put an image inside of a T button. You can put a label on an image inside of a T button. So now, and you can put that whole T button inside of a list box. So now you need a list box and a button and an image and a label and a border and and some lines and rectangles and so on. So that's the reason R&D is looking at how to do some things in the future to do a little more smart linking, or maybe we're going to have to parse style files to see what you're using and not using. But we understand. But just everybody get a 64 gigabyte iOS device. Oh, sorry. Let's see. What was the question there, Al?
Part of that ListView was is FireDAC going to replace DBExpress?
Eventually, yes.
Eventually, yes. So right now they're still there, but my understanding is FireDAC will be our data access components for these multi-device, multi-platforms.
Going into the future, it has more support for more databases, has more functionality. It's fast. It's got power. All those things. It's a great replacement for the old Borland database engine because it can do its automatic updating. You don't have to do anything special. And you can bind, it works with live binding, so you can bind fields from FireDAC or DBExpress or Interbase Express to fields of ListView. ListView has, I think, it has a text property and it has a description property. So there's two things per element of a ListView as well as the accessories. ListBox, of course, you can build up complex list items, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
And part of that same ListView question was, what's the the good or the bad, or maybe using a grid or a string grid. So for that, it's kind of best, that kind of falls under the whole UI design considerations. I get asked a lot of questions. Is it best to use a grid, a string grid, a listbox, or a ListView? So really, the biggest thing to consider here is the UI design. So for me personally, I still think it's best to have either a ListView or a list box on the screen that you can then click on and then move to the next screen. So like a list box will allow you to have multiple columns. Alternatively, if you need to maintain that grid look, you can also work with something like the grid layout. So one aspect that's important on mobile is that the screen can or will be rotated so it may have different size widths, and that will be a lot easier to have those components managed that way for you by using a list box. However, also the design for touch screen often means, especially on the smaller devices, that grids are just not appropriate, and scrolling lists are definitely better. So in all of these cases, I always go back to the list box or the ListView, which is really slightly faster, but it also has some flexibility that you might need. There is a great YouTube video on this, and I'll post it in the question, and that might be worthwhile to take a look at.
Yep. ListView is great for elements coming from a data set, especially if lots of them. It's highly tuned for lots of elements in a ListView. ListBox for, if you've got 10 choices, 5 choices, some limited set of choices, a ListBox would be okay too. But a ListView, you're going to load hundreds of hotel names. ListView is great. And it has the accessories and all sorts of things built in. So you can just, the more button, the detail button, and so on. The add and delete type operations you see on iOS with the plus and the minus sign. And it has mode-based. It has a mode, what edit mode it's in. So that is all built in. And then you can write some code to do whatever your application is supposed to do when it's in edit mode, like edit, delete, whatever. So ListView is great for all of that stuff. And ListBox is good for general purpose lists of things. And grid is general purpose. You can stick anything in a grid, like, a Boolean, checkbox, whatever. And a string grid is what it is. It's strings, right?
That's correct. Now some folks still want to use this grid layout, and that's okay. So if you still want to decide to use and work with a grid layout, then I'd maybe look at creating like David mentioned, a composite component in code that you can then add to the grid layout. Maybe like a T rectangle with a T label inside of it, and then you can do label align to the client, and then you can set to align the text appropriately. And then you can have a property of the object, even set the color, which updates all of those T rectangle. And I could probably send you some code on what I'm talking about. So all of this is possible.
You definitely on devices, and even in Windows and Macintosh. That's why there is T layout and T layout 3D. That's why there's the flow layout and the grid layout. Grid layout, all elements are the same height and width. Flow layout, they just flow from left to right, right to left, and so on. You have anchors, so you can anchor things so that it may be anchored to an upper left side or lower right side. So no matter what orientation you're in on iPad or on iPhone, then things look right and they snap correctly. You can scale the layouts and so on. All of that is there for you to deal with the devices. And again, there's lots of code snippets that come with XE4 and also FireMonkey mobile samples that show you a lot of these kinds of things in action. So I'm here in my IDE, Al. I finally came back over to it. I just wanted to show a few things. One of these is this is a Marco Cantu example that we show, and I'm not sure if it's in the samples, but Marco has blogged about it. And what this does is it says, well, there might be data that you want to display that is coming from a feed. So he uses the HTTP Indy component from Project Indy, and that's going to take a URL, and then we're going to get the data from it. He uses an XML document and the ADOM or ADOM multi-device XML parser. And he's got two different tabs. Now he's put them here at the top, but you know, the normal case on a ListBox or tab control, which is a tab control, just like you can use on Windows and Macintosh as well, is there's a tab position down here, and you have several choices. You have the bottom, dots. Some people like those dots as you're moving between pages. None are at the top, so we can move it to the bottom. That's fine as well. And then he's got this button, a speed button here. The speed button is inside of the header. There's a header label. These are all part of the T toolbar. And then he's got the bottom control down here as well. And then he's got two tabs. He's got a Delphi Feeds tab and an Embarcadero Blogs tab. And if we look at the code behind, what happens is he says, okay, if the tab that you clicked on, which is up here, then set, or the tab that you're on, when you click on the tab, it'll choose which is the, let's go back over here on tab. Let's go to the event. Oh, he's using tab index. Okay. So down here, he says, okay, wherever I click on, that's going to be the tab that I'm going to use. Then it's going to set the right URL based on what the source of the feed that we want. Either it's coming from Delphi Feeds, and that's the URL for Delphi Feeds, or it's coming from the blogs.embarcadero.com feed, which is WP. We use WordPress, mu-feed. And then he sets the target ListBox. Target list is of type T-ListBox. He sets that either to the ListBox, which is on the Delphi tab, or the Embarcadero tab ListBox. Again, those are over here. So here's the ListBox for Delphi. And then if we go to this tab, the ListBox here, he could have used a ListView. He decided in this case to use the ListBox. That's fine. And then once he's done that, then he says, okay, this string, we're going to call the get method of HTTP, pass the string to it. We're going to load into XML document so that it parses the data, and then we're going to activate the parser. And then he has some code here for looking for title and publication date and the link, and he's sticking those into these items inside of this ListBox. Then he says, okay, let's set the ListBox. We'll create a ListBox item on the fly because we don't know how many XML records we're going to get. He sets the text equal to the title that he parsed out up here. He sets the item detail to be author hyphen, and then the publication date. And then he has the tag string, which is the URL that was part of the link from the XML feed. And then he calls add object to put that ListBox that was created into the target list, which is either, again, the Delphi list or the MBT list. He does an end update. and then he puts the label status to be RSS processed. So let's run this on the simulator and look at it in action. So this case, it's not coming from a database, it's coming from an RSS feed via XML. So here's the simulator. And now if we go to the Delphi Feeds tab and click there, it says it's processed it. Here's all the different items in it and so on. And we can go down and we can grab and scroll. And there's not too many, so he felt comfortable using ListBox Magic. It was returning tens of thousands of rows. Same thing on the Embarcadero blogs. Let's see who's been blogging recently besides me. Okay, don't worry about that. Something going on. So Fernando blog, Tim talked about the webinar. Here's me talking about the episode today, which was yesterday, was tomorrow. Here's Jose Leon, what's new? Anders blogged about how to get the T web browser component for iOS to zoom and, zoom in and out versus having it just loading a whole page and you got to scroll to the right and left and up and down. You can actually zoom in and out on a page. And lots of other stuff. Pava was in Croatia and so on. So that's an example of pulling RSS data. We can quit the simulator and come back to the IDE. And again, Al, showed you getting database data as well. Let's see, what else? Okay, so here's a Tchart demo. And so down here on FireMonkey, we have Tchart Lite, and in there we have Tchart and Tchart 3D. So a simple charting of pie charts and bar charts, and also a 3D version that you can put either in a viewport 3D on an HD application, or you can put a Tchart 3D in a true 3D FireMonkey mobile application. You would do by saying File, New, FireMonkey mobile application, and then pick what you want to do from that point. And also from FireMonkey desktop application as well. All right. And then he's got two buttons here. So here's a list box where we're just using, and we've got list box items with some text in it. Right, there's the text. And then depending on which one we click on, for example, IB to go, we're just going to show the form. And he's got two different forms in the project, one for SQLite, one for Interbase to go. And he says show modal, which means it'll wait till we do the click. It creates it. And same thing up here with listbox item for the other one, for the other, the click. Again, here's a binding form. We can look at each of these. So here's Interbase to go. It's got a SQL connection component that's connected to an Interbase database, which is our good old-fashioned employee GDB, which is being talked to by an IP address on my Interbase server. We've got a sales or invoice, so it gets the order status and gives us the total. And then we've got a dataset provider, which is going to provide the data to the client dataset. The client dataset will display it. And we've got two tabs within this list, one for charting and one for the data underneath it. So if we activate the database and we activate the sales data, then we get a nice sort of 3D pie chart, which says based on the status of each of the sales, so sum of total sales by order status, there's orders that are open, there's orders that are shipped, and there's orders that are waiting to be shipped. So that's an example of using Tchart. There's another, let's see, I think there's another example for using that. And again, notice you can prototype it all at design time and then deploy it. Let's see if I had the other. No, I don't have the other one. Do I? Maybe I do. Oh, let me bring this back up anyway, just for a moment. And the nice thing about testing this, if you don't have a Mac or simulators, you can also look at it at design time. Let's see if this works. I forget if I activated the database or not. So here's the data. So here, I just changed the target platform to 32-bit Windows. And again, now when I click on SQLite, I get the SQLite data, which is the invoice total by country for the 10 biggest countries. And we can look at the SQL statement for that. Let's see if this one works. Okay, here's the same thing again, using Interbase database. So you can test it at design time. You can see it live, and you can also see it at runtime, both on Win32 and then deployed over to your device. This is using this other database that that David found called Chinook. And the SQL statement over here is select distinct billing country, sum the total as total from, and group by the invoice billing country, and just give me 10 of them, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 countries rather than more. So he just says order by total descending, limit 10. We could change that to ascending, I guess, and not create too much havoc here. I think I just go, I think it's ASC, right, Al, for SQL? I can type, and let's turn it back off, and yeah, now we're getting the 10 biggest that way somehow. Then we can just put that back. So different ways to do things. Again, here's a tab item, and then within the tab item, we've got a chart that's dropped down. You can also right mouse click with Tchart, and it gives you the link to Steam of software about Tchart. You can edit the chart to choose, set the data series, which is being done through live bindings in our case. You can look at the data that's associated and the type of chart and so on. Titles, legends. Do you want to have a 3D offset for it and such? And you can also go in here and view what type of chart you're using and such. So pretty straightforward use. You can use live bindings, or you can just read through a data set and store the data inside of the data series for the chart itself. Okay, let's see what else. I'm still working on the investment dashboard. Let me show you this one. I don't know if it has, well, I did two things. The World Bank has an enormous amount of data that's available on, you name it, population, mortality rates, potash consumption. It's used in fertilizer and planting, gold, all sorts of indicators that are available, economic GDP indicators and so on. And there's an RSS feed and a whole data structure for pulling the data. So I wrote an application last year to pull the data. I use a HTTP component because, again, it's an HTTP request to a web service that then is going to give me data, and then I go and parse the data. And I built a database, an Interbase database to store all this data. Let's see if I it. Let's do it this way. So let's go over to IB Client Console, and let's look at World Bank data, and let's look at the tables. So I have countries, indicators, country codes, and the World Bank data itself. So country is pretty straightforward. Here's all the different countries, as well as some parts of the world. Like they have these ISO 2 and 3 character country codes. So the world, Arabic world, East Asia, and so on. So you have these regional ones, and then you have country by country by country, and their capital cities and so on. So all that country data came from the World Bank data structure. I pulled it all through the feed. Here's all the different indicators: producer price for barley per ton, and then where it comes from, and is it, and so on. Agricultural land in hectares. You can go down, way down, and get cereal production, land area for each by country, population, percent of population that's in a certain age group. Let's see where I would fit in. I fit in right in here right now in the 60 to 64 world. So just an enormous amount of economic and human data that you can access. And I've pulled all of that into an Interbase database. So here for each indicator for the years 1960 to, I think it was 2010, is that what it is? Year 2008. I haven't pulled, I guess, 2009 and 2010 for some of the things. So I have two parts of this application. This is one that pulls data. And then I wrote this this multi-platform explorer using a ListBox, and here and inside the ListBox I populate it with data. So this is a label. Here's the label, and then in the ListBox there's another label, and I populate that with the indicator ID, the name of the ID. That's a just T label, a second T label, and I've laid them out inside of a ListBox by saying, okay, the alignment of this one is none. The first label, which is the indicator, that's aligned to the client area that's remaining after I align the first label, which is the static text, to be fitted to the left. So each one of those, and I have a blob down here for the text that shows up from the source node. So let's just run this and see what happens. Again, here's data that's been pulled by my other application from the World Bank data, stored in an Interbase database. And now I have this little FireMonkey Explorer, which could run on Macintosh, could run on an iPad. It's not sized for iPhone. I would put the indicators on one page, and then when I selected one, it would move me to data about the indicator and so on. So I use a T-switch. It runs on Windows. It runs on the devices as well to turn on the connection to the database. So here's now all the indicators, right? And so we have lots of indicators, and here's data about the indicators and so on. So we can go down and real effective exchange rate and find out where it comes from. It's a World Development Indicator. It's from the World Bank National Accounts data and something called OECD. And then we can look at the data for that indicator. So I have a master detail relationship on two different tabs. This one is a ListView. This one is a ListBox of just a few items that we can look at. And this is a T-memo that's bound to the data from the source node, which is a blob. And then here's all the indicator data for that indicator. And I should probably put the text up here or what that indicator was, so I don't have to keep flipping back to find out that it's political stability and absence of violence / terrorism there. Okay. And then we can scroll around and find the data. So the next step is to visualize that data, and we'll do that in 2 weeks in the data visualization part. But again, another example of data that originally came from an RSS feed and then was stored in a database, and then I used ListView on this side because there are lots of indicators, so I want to pull them and scroll through them. And then I used a ListBox over here for just laying out nicely left and right aligned some text static labels and then the data that's coming from the indicator and a blob there. So my goal next is that when I'm not on an iPad or on a desktop is I'll cut these into two separate forms and have the list view be the one that you'd show up first, and then you'd select one and move over and see the detailed data, and then do a swipe again and go and look at the underlying data, and then maybe do a visualization of a certain country or overall for the world of the data. Okay, so that one. And then one last one to show, because we're near the end. I'm still working on this investment dashboard. We'll get to that in a blog and maybe next week or the week after. This is something I did last year. I have population data for all the states of Brazil based over time, and that's in an Interbase database that I've populated. I have a 3D space here, and the 3D space is where I'm going to display in this 3D layout. I'm going to instantiate a bunch of 3D paths, and then I'm going to use the path 3D and the population data to extrude out or show you the growth in population for Brazilian states over time. I have a camera on this viewport 3D so that I can change the view of the data, rotate around it, and so on, zoom in on it and such. And I have lots of different layers and a scaled layout and so on. So this would be an example that would fit very nicely on an iPad, but probably wouldn't lend itself. So one of the things I'll do is you can go into the project options, and you can go to version info, and down here you can specify when it's an iOS target. Sorry, so let's add a platform here. Or it's a Macintosh target, or we create an iOS version. You can specify that it's constrained to its orientation and also which device. But let's just run this on Windows for a moment so we can see it in action. And again, I'm going to finish this up for iPad and iOS for 2 weeks from now in the data visualization. So I click on this button to open the state data. So here's all the states, and that's just something I'm working on. And then what I can do is, that's 1872. So the population of the different states, they're pretty flat, but you'll see over time as they grow. So I move this little, the track bar down, and you'll start seeing some of the states. Now we're up to 1900, and you're starting to see some of the states. This is where Sao Paulo is, and this is Rio de Janeiro. But you'll start seeing Sao Paulo grow really large relative to some of the other states. This is their federal district down there, like our Washington, D.C. in the U.S. That's Brasilia, which is its own little federal place. And so, you know, all this is a bunch of TPath 3Ds. I took an SVG file and took the path data for each of the states, and I stored it in a text blob. And we'll again go through this much more, but so when I create them, I just create a path 3D for each of the states as I read through the state table, and then I store the path. I get the bounds of the path data. I take the path data from the blob field, which is path data as a column, and that's got a bunch of move to Bezier curve to move to another spot, line to, and so on. I store that in the data of the path 3D. And the last thing is path 3D has a depth. TPath doesn't have a depth. It's flat, but it still lets you draw a path and fill it with a color or something, or a bitmap. So I start with 0, and then as I move this track bar, so on this track bar change, all I'm doing is getting the population index and setting the population depth. So I set the depth based on each of the states' populations over time as it's changing, and that's how I extrude the underlying objects. And then you can do things like you can rotate this around, and you can move it up and down, and I'm still working on a few things to zoom in and zoom out. The scaling factor is not quite set right, but we can, and these are not moving quite right to the up and down, but that'll be all working for 2 weeks from now. So another case of using some of the 3D objects and the 3D parts of FireMonkey to visualize data and maybe make some business decisions. And the last one, I don't think I'll just show you. It's a work in action. Here, all I'm doing is getting data. It's crashing right now. I'm calling Bloomberg to get the status of the stock market for 2 different things. One is for the New York stock exchange, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and then inside of that, I create a ListBox item, and I start updating it. So I put in a market label saying it's Dow Jones, and I align that to the left, and then based on the value I get back, if I see that it's trending down, then I'm going to first I create an ellipse, and then I'm going to set, if it's down, then I'm going to set the ellipse color to red. If it's up, to green, and if it's unchanged, then to yellow. And then I add that market indicator, align it to the right, and add it to the ListBox item. And I do the same thing for NASDAQ, and I'll clean this all up. It's still a work in progress. But the idea there is I'm using ListBoxes again, and then sticking a label in and sticking an ellipse in. So then it would give me a nice little dashboard for any number of markets around the world that I'd want. And then if I have my stock list coming from my database, those would show up over there in a ListBox or in a ListView. So you have to come back in 2 weeks and see my live markets dashboard application in action. So a little hint of 2 weeks from now for the data visualization and the engineering and scientific work. Okay, let me switch back to the desktop machine over here and show the screen. Okay, and again, just keep following us on Twitter. We have, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, I clicked on a link. That one, I clicked on the email address. That's what I did. So, you know, exe4, whether using C++ for Windows, Mac, Win32, Win64, and Mac, or using Delphi on Win32, Win64, Mac, and iOS. With FireMonkey, you can do multi-device development. You can connect to all kinds of infrastructures, all the databases, either with DBExpress, FireDAC, or Interbase Express to get to all the popular SQL databases, MySQL, Oracle, Postgres, and so on. You can find all that information about FireDAC on the FireDAC product site that we have. Next week, we're going to go through a whole rapid prototyping scenario, starting with some customer requirements and a user And then we're going to start building the user interface and sitting with the user and saying, is this what you want? Is this what you want? Oh, you want some data? Do you have the database yet? No, we'll use prototype bind source. So stay tuned for fun with that. And then on June 7th, the data visualization. Oh, it's in 3 weeks. So there you go. I don't even know what the schedule is anymore. Engineering, data visualization, scientific and engineering graphics. And then the season finale on the 14th. Special offer is good till next week, May 22nd, 10% off. New license and upgrade, just go to RAD offer page. Let's click on that, and all the details are there. Let's see if it comes up. And you're seeing that, right, Al? I hope.
Yes, I can see that.
Good.
Yes.
So I did share the screen. So anyway, there's also information about RAD Studio and FireDAC special introductory offer. All of that is available on the RAD offer page. Okay, and we'll do that. Just some resources. There's our email addresses. Let's look and see what else. Tutorial. Anything else you've been seeing, Al? Let's see.
Yeah, we got the usual. When is Android going to be available? And more importantly, how do we get onto the Android beta program when it starts? I assume we'll have the same Android. Go ahead, David.
No, go ahead. I mean, I think you said.
I assume we'll have the
right.
Yeah, I assume we'll have the same. There is a public roadmap post, so follow that for updates to when Android will be released. And I suspect we'll have the same Android beta program as we did for iOS. So everyone who's on the iOS beta program will most likely get invited to the Android beta program. And same thing, if you want to get onto the Android beta program, just send us your email contacts, and we'll make sure you're on it when it's available.
Yeah, what we did for iOS is everyone who was on XE3. If you upgraded or had a license for XE3, then you could join the iOS beta, which started, last year and early into this year, depending on when people had their XE3. So the on-ramp to iOS and Android and multi-device is XE4. It's FireMonkey 3. It's learning how to use FireMonkey 3. And we have lots of videos for FireMonkey, lots of videos for multi-device. Tons of videos I've done personally. I did 31 videos for C++ multi-device in January. I did 31 videos for XE3 in October, and we've had lots of webinars. We had Code Rage 7 for Delphi and C++ Builder in November and December, where we talked about FireMonkey and XE3 and multi-platform and multi-device. So there's lots of materials, lots of stuff in the doc wiki, lots of tutorials. The way to get started is to start with XE4 and FireMonkey 3. Learning about devices, learning about, form families, getting used to using the device interfaces and the device components. So that's the way to get started. Make sure you get the upgrade subscription. We also call it in different forms, either maintenance and or software assurance. Add that to your purchase or add it to your upgrade purchase, and you'll get all sorts of stuff over a 12-month period. With especially now, the desktop platforms aren't changing that fast. Apple once a year, Microsoft every 3 years, Java, I don't know, whenever Oracle, I guess, decides. Android, that's changing, slowing down. In the early days, there was, 2.0, 2.1, 2.3, 2.4, all those were happening. We saw that in Java as well, Al. You lived at JDK 1.0, 1.1, and then they went into triple digits, right? 1.1.1, 2.8. I mean, they went all over the place, and it was JME, JEE, JSE, and that's all been.
And it was sad. I can be like in 3 or 4 decimal places down with a JDK fix, and it broke everything. So
we're staying on top of all these platforms for you. And the secret for you then is to learn. Everyone is to learn FireMonkey and the platform services. We talked about those in previous versions. I've got videos for those. The platform services help you deal with the fact that you want your code to have, how to use a menu on Windows and Mac, but on iOS, you'll want to use toolbars and buttons, for example. But if you use a T-Calendar Edit component or a toolbar or T-ListBox, T-ListView works on Windows and works on Mac. It's not just for iOS. And we're bringing all of that, all of the abstraction layers, all the implementation for audio capture, a video bitmap capture, playing movies, browsing, other things. We're bringing those to Android. Get started today with FireMonkey 3 and XE4. add your upgrade subscription to it. And as Apple releases new stuff after WWDC in June, with Google I/O happening this week, there's updates happening to Android. We will make sure that we are right on top. We're on top of it. I mean, we're going to all the different events. We have good contacts inside of all the platform vendors. So, and we know we can stay up to date. And one of the great things is if you have the latest version of our product and you have upgrade subscription, we're going to be delivering all sorts of feature functionality and platform support as it changes. So if it's Windows 8.1 or whatever, that is the key. Of course, it's your choice. You could wait. But then you'll have to ramp up really quick if you haven't started with FireMonkey back in XE2. You're going to have to ramp up. And all the things that have happened in FireMonkey 3, which are just even more power and more flexibility for you. So get started today. I don't know how many times I can say it.
Yeah, the good news is, these Delphi iOS apps are being accepted into the Apple Store, so that's all great. So we are creating true native Apple iOS applications, including this embedded encrypted Interbase database that is being accepted by the Apple Store. So that's all fantastic.
Yep. Okay, Al, I guess for you it's only 2:20, so it's not quite happy hour yet.
In some places they do consider it happy hour, but no, not for me yet.
So Al, it's great. Anders will be back next Friday. Those are our email addresses if we didn't get, or if you think of questions after the fact. And we'll see you next week for on-device rapid prototyping. Thanks, everyone. Take care.